Hello there and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video. Today I'm going to speak about something I've been talking about a lot recently, which is, surprise, surprise, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But I'm going to concentrate on a particularly refined, nuanced area of this conversation, and one that is brought up by William Lane Craig, the famous Christian apologist and theologian, and thinker and philosopher. And this is to do with lottery winners. So the claim is, the maxim is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I have recently had a debate with Jonathan McClatchy where I've said really we should better understand this as claims that are out of the ordinary for us require evidence that is out of the ordinary for us in order that we believe them. In other words, it depends on our worldview and what we bring to the table with regard to our background knowledge about how the world works as to how we evaluate what extraordinary claims are, and also how we evaluate extraordinary evidence. With that in mind, what William Lane Craig tries to do is to say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is demonstrably false. And one of the ways he tries to do this is by bringing into play the example of a lottery winner, by saying that lottery winners are extraordinarily improbable, statistically so, and there's a problem with that. But he's talking about particular lottery winners, and says, well, we don't need crazy amounts of evidence that they win or this particular person has won. Therefore, the whole statement is false. Anyway, let me just play you what Craig actually says.
It sounds so commonsensical, doesn't it, to say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence if you were to believe them. That sounds so right. But in fact, I think it's demonstrably false. It is simply not true that highly improbable events require extraordinary evidence in order to believe in them. And probability theorists realize this. From the time of Condorcet through John Stuart Mill, probability theorists debated over what it would take to establish the reality of a highly improbable event. And they realized very quickly that if you require that extraordinary events require extraordinary evidence, then we would be prevented from believing many ordinary but highly improbable events that happen all the time. For example, suppose you hear on the evening news an announcement of the pick in last night's lottery. Now that's an enormously improbable event, one chance out of millions perhaps. And yet, you would never need to have extraordinary evidence that was more probable than that in order to believe in it rationally. So what probability theorists came to see is that you need to consider not only the intrinsic probability of the event, but you also need to determine the ratio between the probability of the evidence that we have, given that the event occurred, versus the probability of that evidence if the event did not occur. And if that ratio weights in favor of saying the evidence is vastly more probable if the event occurred than if it did not, then that can serve to counterbalance any intrinsic improbability in the event itself. And so it's simply and demonstrably not the case that extraordinary events require extraordinary evidence, and that's why we are able to rationally believe in many extraordinary events on the basis of evidence that is not itself highly extraordinary.
Okay, so the first thing to say is that he's wrong, really. And he's wrong because I think he's trying to look at the maxim from an objective philosophical point of view rather than a personal, subjective, epistemological and psychological point of view, which is what I would say, which is it's obviously true that if I was to claim that I have a table, you would believe me on that verbal testimony alone. But if I said I flew to the moon and back on a unicorn last night, you would not believe that on verbal testimony alone, because that is a claim that for everyone, as far as I'm aware, that is out of the ordinary, and therefore you would require evidence that is out of the ordinary. You'll need a load of evidence in order to believe that. Stupendous amounts of evidence compared to the claim that I've got a table. So it seems to be demonstrably true that this maxim works. So what really we're talking about is what is defined as out of the ordinary for us. Okay, so the resurrection of Jesus, as far as a dying and rising God, man, spirit is concerned, is out of the ordinary for a skeptic, but for a Christian, it's ordinary. It's what you would expect. And the problem is what they bring to the table in terms of their background knowledge as to how they evaluate that as being not so far out of the ordinary that the evidence of the Gospels can't even begin to justify believing in it, which is what the skeptic would say, which is Paul and the Gospels is simply nowhere near good enough evidence to support a justified belief in the resurrection of Jesus. But by using this example of the lottery, Craig has a problem here, because we need to get straight that is not analogous. These two things aren't analogous. So winning the lottery is not analogous with a dying and rising God-man spirit. People win the lottery every week. It's statistics. If you get 1 million people buying a ticket and winning is 1,000,000 to 1, then every week you're pretty much statistically certain to get a winner. And if you don't get it this week, you'll definitely get one next week type thing. You know the stats. In other words, winning the lottery is not improbable, and it doesn't break the laws of nature. It's just statistics. What Craig tries to do is say that, okay, this particular person winning the lottery is vastly improbable. That's 1,000,000 to 1, or whatever the lottery stats are. Now, the issue here, again, is that it's still not breaking the laws of nature. So, although it's fairly improbable that an individual person will win the lottery, it doesn't break the laws of nature, and it's something that we know will happen to someone. It's just that particular person is where we start skewing the probability. And so really, it's not vastly improbable. It's not in the same, it's nowhere near being analogous to a dying and rising God-man spirit. So that's important to get out of the way. People win the lotteries all the time, but also the evidence appears to be commensurate with the claim. What do I mean by that? Well, the evidence that we are provided for any given person winning the lottery is always sufficient for us to believe that that person did indeed win the lottery. Now, what am I talking about in this context? Well, the Lottery Commission aren't going to give out $1 million willy-nilly, right? So they are going to have really good reason to give away that much money. And that really good reason is somebody provides them with a bona fide, verifiable winning ticket that is not fraudulent. So in other words, if in the news we understand that the Lottery Commission has granted $1 million to Harry Smith, then we can be fairly confident that Harry Smith has actually got the winning ticket. Not only that, but Harry Smith's friends and family appear to be in agreement with this. Not only that, but 3, 4, 5 local news sources, TV sources, and maybe 3 or 4 print media sources verify these claims. They've sent out journalists to verify the claim that Harry Smith has won the lottery. And social media and all these sorts of things. So when we look into this, we can easily verify that Harry Smith has indeed won the lottery. It might be slightly different odds if we know beforehand that Harry Smith is a convicted fraudster and has a very poor track record for telling the truth. Okay, the odds are going to change. But without that, Harry Smith winning the lottery and all of that evidence to suggest that he has indeed won the lottery, and there is no evidence against him winning the lottery, that evidence should be sufficient for a naturalistic event to be explained naturalistically. That is to say that here's a 1 in a million chance of some individual winning the lottery. And actually, we've got all this evidence that is good enough, is sufficient to support the 1 in a million chance claim. This is not a problem. Craig, I think, thinks that winning the lottery is far, far more problematic as a claim than it really is. But I'd have to say, not only that, what we have here is a problem with magnification. So I would say that what Craig is doing is when we have a very distant view of this, a zoomed out view down on the world, where in fact we don't have granular details. We don't have very much detail at all, and we don't know that it's Harry Smith. We know that 1 in a million chance of winning the lottery, but there's, I don't know, 1.3 million tickets sold. So you're thinking someone's going to win the lottery. So from this point of view, it's not really very improbable. What Craig does, he says, right, to get away from the fact that actually someone winning the lottery is an almost statistical certainty, I want to play around with these odds, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom right in, down close, and I'm going to get to the details of Harry Smith. And I say, what's the chance of Harry Smith, who's bought one ticket, winning the lottery, and then he buys one ticket and then wins the lottery? And he says, oh, look at this. I've gone in granular. So the stats are pretty astronomical against this guy winning. Oh my goodness, he's actually gone and won. Now, I would say what he's doing is when he's zooming in, when you zoom into a granular level, you need to take in all the stats with you, as you zoom in. So when you're zoomed out, you've got a very poor knowledge of individuals. You've just got an overall population. Say, okay, there's 1.3 million tickets sold, 1 in a million chance of winning, someone's going to win. That's all we can say. And when you zoom in, you're isolating one person, but you also need to therefore take into account all these other variables that you know. So, the other variables are, I would go into like almost a deterministic level here of if I know all the wave functions of reality, of material reality, and know that he's bought this particular ticket and chose these numbers, and the balls are going to go like that, and they are going to land because I can determine through the wave functions of the physics involved here that the balls are going to, these particular lottery balls are going to be selected, and these are going to be the numbers. I can actually predict with a 1-to-1 accuracy that Harry Smith is going to win. So as you zoom in, you have greater understanding of the variables, such that to predict Harry Smith is far easier than to do when you're zoomed out. And I'm playing around with this idea. I'm not 100% sure this works as dealing with what Craig is saying. But I think what Craig is doing is he's zooming in, but isolating only one variable and forgetting all the other knowledge that you would have when you zoom in really close, and saying, there you go. So we might, the lottery commission might say, well, this the winning ticket's from someone from North Carolina, right? And as you zoom in, you know that Harry Smith is from North Carolina. Okay, so again, that probability has now gone down from 1 in a million to 1 in 50,000. Okay, so we're starting to get more knowledge about the winning ticket and about who this person is. And therefore, the amount of evidence you're going to need is slightly less, because now it's only a 1 in 50,000 chance. And I don't think Craig's use of zooming in really is nuanced enough. I don't think he steel mans the argument enough. But the simple point that I really want to make here is that actually the knowledge, even if you are going to ignore all the other variables and just single out Harry Smith and say, oh, what's the chance of Harry Smith winning? Being able to look at bank account statements and verifiable tickets and lottery commission and all these different news sources and friends and family and social media and all that is evidence that's commensurate with the claim. And especially when you look at the news and have an inductive appraisal of the news using, inductive reasoning, Bayesian reasoning, whatever, where you say that the news has never been wrong about a lottery winner before, So now, like 30 years after doing the lottery, or however many years, whatever, they've got they're announcing another lottery winner. Then I'm going to have pretty good confidence that the news are going to be correct, etc., etc., etc. And what you're doing is you're actually building up a suite of evidence, different types of evidence from different sources that support the claim that Harry Smith won the lottery, and you're absolutely justified in believing that claim, because it isn't particularly out of the ordinary. It's statistically improbable, but not in the same ballpark as a dying and rising God-man spirit. So I think Craig has some serious problems with his lottery claim, that he does trot out an awful lot. I've heard him say this in a number of different places and scenarios. Interestingly, this is also dealt with to some degree by Richard Carrier in an article he calls William Lane Craig's duplicitous denial that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I'll put a link to this in the description. Well worth reading, and he takes William Lane Craig's maths and mathematical claims concerning Bayesian reasoning. He takes them to task in William Lane Craig's broader attack on extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence. Well worth a look, but he also includes a little bit on the on the lottery claim, and I'll just read you some parts from this. So as Carrier says, Craig has pulled a rhetorical trick here, and someone has already pointed this out on his own website. He is claiming winning a lottery is an extraordinary claim, and yet we believe it on non-extraordinary evidence. Therefore, the maxim is false. Quote, and therefore the maxim is false. And yet, though both those assertions are false, and thus so is his conclusion. Winning lotteries is an extremely common, superbly well-documented phenomenon. It is therefore ordinary. It is not extraordinary. That is why there is a vast difference between saying a South Carolinian won a lottery, I said North Carolina, change it up, and saying a South Carolinian rose supernaturally from the dead. That people win lotteries has been supremely verified as a common occurrence. That people rise supernaturally from the dead has not. That's what makes it an extraordinary claim, not a merely improbable one. Translated mathematically, and this is where he gets a little bit more technical, says Carrier. The prior probability of someone winning a lottery is low, say millions to 1 against, but not extraordinarily low, as there are millions of people playing lotteries every day. So the prior probability of there being a lottery winner in any given month is not low, but as near to 100% as makes all odds. And we've reliably documented thousands of cases, and few ever turn out false. So many, in fact, as to make it one of the most ordinary claims around today. He continues, but the prior probability of someone rising supernaturally from the dead is vastly lower than that, so low in fact that, unlike lottery winners, we've reliably documented not even a single instance of it in thousands of years, nor of any powers capable of it. Of course, setting aside the one instance in thousands of years that Craig wants to claim is well documented, but we mathematically must set it aside, as that cannot be included in the prior probability, which is conditional only on background knowledge, B, not the evidence of the case, E. This is where he talked about the maths previously. And when a claim is that improbable, having a prior so low, it gives us an effective frequency of approaching zero across all of human history. In other words, we've had no instances of this, so the prior probability of this happening is vanishingly small. The evidence we would need to believe it happened has to be, as Craig himself admits, just as improbable unless the claim is true. Hence, we need extraordinary evidence to believe extraordinary claims. Lottery wins are ordinary claims, so ordinary evidence suffices for them. But miracle claims are extraordinary claims, and that's why they need extraordinary evidence. Which means, just as Mauro said, who was the guy who was asking this question of Craig, evidence that is extraordinarily improbable unless the claim is true. So basically, Carrier really takes Craig to task on this lottery claim. Further concluding, winning lotteries is not extraordinary. It is in fact so incredibly common and widely documented as to be totally ordinary. Moreover, we actually do have extraordinary amounts of very strong evidence that news reports of winners are almost always true. For miracles, neither is ever the case. They have never been verified as commonplace factual events, the way lottery wins have, and we have no evidence for any miracle claim even remotely as vast or strong as the evidence we have for the reliability of reported lottery wins. There you go. I really wanted to zone in on this lottery claim because William Lane Craig makes it an awful lot, and I just want to put out there that it's not a good move and it doesn't work and it shouldn't be held up as a great claim. And I argued extraordinary claims against Jonathan McClatchy on Unbelievable recently, and in a couple of his papers he reiterates Craig's lottery claim, and it's not correct. So don't do it. But as ever, question everything. Hopefully this has been useful for you, and it is this video offers some service to you intellectually. I think it's good ammunition to counter. I hope it's good ammunition to counter claims that you hear from people like William Lane Craig. Anyway, thanks for your support. As ever, question everything, and please like, subscribe, share, and do all that stuff. Take care.